Hey guys, today we're in the book of Genesis, chapter 43. So we ended with the brothers going back and saying they needed to take the younger brother back to Egypt, and Jacob would not have it. So we pick up in 43 and it says, Now the famine was severe in the land. You got to remember that the famine was 7 years long. We seem to think that when the brothers first went to Egypt, it was probably during the first year of the famine. And as they went, as they went back and they got uh, many bags of grain. They probably thought it was enough, but now they have depleted that, and now it's probably around the beginning of the second year, and they're getting hungry, and so they need to go back. And so eventually, their father Jacob said, "Go again and buy us a little food." They're going back out of necessity, not to go back and to rescue uh, his son Simeon, who is in jail in Egypt. But Judah said to him, the man, talking about Joseph, solemnly warned us, You shall not see my face unless you will bring your younger brother. And so he goes on a series of asking and begging his dad, Please let us take back the youngest son, Benjamin, so that we can buy food. If we go back without Benjamin, the Pharaoh's number two, this official, Joseph, will not see us, and we will not be able to buy food, and it will be a waste of time. Notice verse 8, it says, And Judah said to Israel, his father, Send the boy with me. You're going to notice in the next chapter or so that they refer to Benjamin as a boy. We don't know exactly how old he is, but with the term being boy, he was younger. He could have been a baby when Joseph was sold into slavery, so maybe a young preteen during this time. And let's see, verse 11, it says, When their father Israel said to them, If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits in your bags. Carry a present down to the man, a little balm, honey, gum, myrrh, pistachio, nuts, and almonds. This is kind of Jacob's thing, right? Do you remember back in Genesis chapter 33 when Esau was coming, and while Esau was a long way off, he sent a gift package, right? And so Jacob, this is what he does. He's sending lots of gifts to the official, to Joseph, to Pharaoh's number two, along with money to buy grain. He wants him to take this and understand this. Notice in verse 12, it says, Take double the money with you. Because if you remember, they took the money for the grain, and when they got home, all their money was in their bags. So Jacob is saying, Hey, take double the money. Take the money that you owe him, in case if it was an oversight, you can pay for the past grain, but also take money so that you could pay for this grain. So that's why he says, take double money. There's a little more to that we'll talk about in a minute, though. He says, May God Almighty grant you mercy, and may he send back your other brother and Benjamin. If you remember yesterday when we read, he didn't care anymore about Simeon, right? He said, I don't care. Benjamin is my only son. But now we see him kind of coming back to reality and saying, Hey, I hope in God's mercy he will send back Simeon and Benjamin and all my other sons. And so they get there, they meet Joseph, and Joseph says, Hey, you're going to, verse 16, they're going to dine with me. Now, this is unusual. There's no reason that an Egyptian would dine with Hebrew men, especially Hebrew men that he didn't even know or understand. But they set up this meal, and what does it do? In verse 18, it causes the brothers to be afraid. They have no idea why they're doing this. This is so unusual. It's scary. It's kind of like, are they setting us up? Are they going to come in and arrest us? Why is this guy being so nice to us? And so in verse 19, they go to the steward. They go to the guy who runs the house, kind of like the assistant of Joseph. and they explain everything that has happened to him, kind of like a test run. They tell him everything that they're going to tell Joseph so they can make sure they get all the details right. But the steward tells him, peace to you, do not be afraid, for your God and the God of your father has put the treasure in your sacks to you. This housekeeper, this chief, this assistant says, don't be so scared. It's because of your God and the God of your father that you were shown this graciousness, that you weren't charged for the prior grain. Be peaceful. Don't worry about this. You're worrying about something you shouldn't. In verse 24, it says that they were brought into Joseph's house and they were given them water and they had washed their feet. They were expected to be taken into slavery, but now here they are being shown love and compassion. Not only that, but they fed their animals, their donkeys, fodder. So when Joseph came home, they brought into the house with him and presented them with the gift, and they bowed down. The second time, right? Remember the dream of Joseph that his brothers would bow down. This is the second time his brothers bowed down to him. And he inquired about their welfare and said, is your father well? How old is he? Is he still alive? This was so unusual that literally the second highest ranking guy in the world is caring about this little Hebrew family in Canaan. Not only so much, but they care about his father and how he's doing, how things are going. This is so unusual. And they bowed their heads and prostrated themselves, once again bowing down. And he lifted up eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and he said, is this your youngest son, your youngest brother of whom you spoke? And then Joseph hurried out, for his compassion grew warm for his brother, and he sought a place to weep. Benjamin is Joseph's biological brother. Their mother, Rachel, only had two sons, and that was Joseph and that was Benjamin. So even though they're all brothers, they're kind of step brothers except for Benjamin. And now he sees Benjamin, and you can imagine the emotions that Joseph has. So he runs out. He washes his face. He doesn't let them see emotions. And he says that he was served by himself and they by themselves. It's not that Joseph hated them. This was an Egyptian custom that Hebrews looked below Egyptians. Egyptians are thought of as gods. They are people of the gods. And so you have all Egyptians and you have everybody else in the world, and those two should never meet. So this was just a social custom that was normal in those days. And that's why it said it was an abomination to the Egyptians. And they set there before them the firstborn according to the birthright and the youngest according to the youth. This is kind of, we get the picture painting. They're sitting at a table, and as Joseph is looking at them, he sees the oldest, the second, the third, the fourth, and they happen to sit in the order of birth from the youngest to the oldest. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, and Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs, and they drank and were merry with him. Now, this doesn't mean that Joseph loves Benjamin anymore. This was a test, right? Think about what had happened to Joseph. Joseph was the youngest before Benjamin, and his brothers hated the youngest because he was most favored. And so Joseph is giving the brothers a test to favor the youngest son to see how they would react. Have they learned their lesson? Would they accept the favor of the youngest, or would they hate him even more? And you can see that the brothers have learned, because it says that they were merry with him. They were happy for the youngest brother. So in this test that they once failed with Joseph, now they're seeming to pass with Benjamin. You might ask yourself, where's Jesus in this story? Well, he's actually kind of a lot of places. Think about this. Remember back in verse 12, it says that they take double the money with you. There was 10 brothers, right? Joseph is in Egypt and Simeon was in Egypt. So there was 10 brothers. They took 10 money sacks, but their father Jacob said, take Take double the money tax. Take 20 money sacks. Well, what's interesting is Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver. We'll see in the New Testament that Jesus was sold for 20 pieces of silver. When they expected to be put into slavery and to be taken away and beaten and no telling what else, what happens? Joseph comes in and loves on them, gives them water and washes their feet. We see the same with disciples, not knowing of the future, not knowing what's going to happen, but Jesus comes in and he has a meal with them. He washes their feet and accepts them with love and compassion. We can see a lot of similarities here. I hope that makes sense, and we'll continue this tomorrow in chapter 44. God bless.